Login accepted.
Hey, welcome to the tech capital of the world. Hey, Kevin, how you doing? Did you see Boba Fett last night?
Yep, I did. I made sure I watched it before anybody spoiled it.
Yeah, you have to these days.
You do, right? You
quickly.
can't go anywhere. It's about somebody spoiling something. So
I watch a YouTuber and like they're always breaking it down. I can remember I think I watched Boba Fett last night around 9 o'clock, and then I went to YouTube and he already had his breakdown video out. Which I know it comes out at 3 a.m., but it's like, man, that was same day, man.
There was some like first things early in the morning. Yeah. It was like people were watching it, like staying up all night.
Right.
Leave their opinion on it. It's like, wow, like I want to watch it. I don't want to get it spoiled, but that's dedication right there.
So it's pretty cool. I think it was great. It was cool.
I liked it.
I'm celebrating with my new Mando posters. I
see that.
I put them on there.
I see that. Very cool. I like it.
So that's kind of what one of the main complaints about Boba Fett. Is it really Mandalorian 2.5? I mean, what is it?
Yeah, but who cares? Give me more.
Who cares? Give me more. Give me more Mando.
Exactly. Just give me more. It's good stuff. I should have worn my helmet back here, shouldn't I?
Yeah, exactly. Just put it on.
I should just put it on. I should have started that way. Maybe
I've got a helmet now. I've got a new helmet. So
I saw. Yeah, you got a different Mandalorian one, didn't you?
Yeah.
This one's cool. Yeah, it's cool. The helmets are really good. If you're the Black Series, if you're into collectible stuff, the Black Series helmets are really good. You got a few in the other studio. There's you got the pilot one and a stormtrooper one. It's like the quality's really high on them. They're really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
The detail's good. So. Yeah, so I thought we'd add a bit of a topic to our video today. We're talking about this morning. So we always get this question, and people always come and ask us. So if you don't know, if it's your first time here, welcome. If you've been here a bunch, you know this already. But we're here every Tuesday, Thursday, and we answer questions about web dev stuff. So if you have a web dev question, throw it in chat. I'll queue it up, and we'll get to it. If you want to super chat it, you can do that too. That guarantees we'll answer it. Otherwise, we'll just do as many as we can as we go through. Yeah. So we always get the question, at least once a week, either Tuesday or Thursday, someone comes on and says, hey, is whatever the flavor of the month AI, because there's always a new flavor of the month, either is GPT-3, is GitHub Copilot, whatever you want, whatever the latest flavor is it going to take our jobs? Are we going to be web developers in 10 years time?
Right.
We always get this question.
I got on Twitter the other day, and I actually deleted my tweet, but there's a guy put a tweet out. He says, hey, boomers think that AIs are going to take over the world, and 20-somethings are buying JPEG and NFTs, making $25,000. And I was like, whoa. And I responded by it's really not boomers that think AI will take over the world. Maybe I'm a boomer, but maybe us boomers don't really know about AI. It's it seems like the younger guys, one of you guys are deciding, should I start to code? You think the AI is going to take over.
And that's the question. They're like, should I do it? Because is it me wasting my time? Because am I just going to... 20 years down the line, is it going to be done? Am I just, is there going to be no jobs for anybody anymore? The robots taking over. And we talk about this a lot, and it's funny. So we'll talk about it in terms of a couple of stories that we've seen. So one that you actually saw today, and I was like, oh, we got to talk about this. How can we not talk about this? This is too funny not to talk about. The headline being, a robot bought my 7-year-old car for more than I paid brand new.
Exactly.
So
there's a lot going on in this story.
There is.
But there's the chip shortage, and if you're in the US, we can't get chips here. That's why they're building new chip plants in Columbus now, and that kind of stuff with COVID and supply chain and all that stuff.
Yep.
But it does go to a point to where like a human would go, there's no way I'm paying $22,000 for a 7-year-old car. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the situation is. But the robot goes out and goes, oh, that's the best price, or I need to make sure I always win, so I outbid all the other people. And so Carvana's using the AI to do this, and it's that's the problem. There's no no gut feeling to it. You know what I mean? That's why I think ultimately robots will never win, because humans just go, I think I'll hold off until the supply chain's figured out. Maybe I don't need a 7-year-old Honda Fit for the same price as a new one. That's got
It was
I don't know
more.
how many miles
He actually made $90 on it. By the way,
no, it goes down. He said he waited. It kept bidding up because it couldn't buy it. They're like, oh, that's not enough. Well, let me throw some more at this. Because like a robot doesn't have any concept of money or profitability. They can look at a P&L statement and determine it, but like they don't have any kind of like, well, if I keep doing this, we'll go broke. And the robot doesn't care if you go broke. It doesn't have any emotional attachment to it. So he made $1,338 higher.
It can only. Oh yeah, you're right down here. Yeah. So yeah, because I mean, it's kind of crazy. It's what we forget is we think of this AI as being this abstract thing, and it's like a black box, and we don't understand it.
Yeah.
But it's actually very understandable in a lot of cases. It'll only ever do what you tell it to do. Still, we're still at that point.
Buy used cars.
Exactly. Buy you exactly
at any cost.
At any cost.
Apparently, that's how it's coded.
Do what you tell it to do. Even if you look at something as complex as like GPT-3, right? It's literally been fed all of the information. It's been fed Wikipedia. It's been fed literature. It's been fed news stories. It'll only ever regurgitate those things. And if you look at it truly, it often gets context very, very wrong.
Very wrong.
Its context is very wrong. It'll just tell a story about something that is unrelated to the story because in one of the things that it was fed, it had a tangent story, and it like, oh well, clearly, it's like, tell me a story about a guy going to college, and all of a sudden it's like throwing in like the guy played football, and it's like, well, no, he didn't. Like, it's not what happened.
Exactly.
Because all it knows is the majority of the stories involve the football thing coming in, so it tries to abstract it and put it together. It's not. It's like it fakes being smart, right? That's the thing. It's faking being smart through information being pushed into it. It's not really smart.
But the emotional intelligence, the gut feeling,
it just doesn't get
things, and the creativity just goes away. In other words, like the only thing it'll know is whatever it's know. Humans actually invent things. Like I've said this a lot. Like humans actually can take, and we don't realize how smart we are. Even if you feel like you're a dumb person, like even if you say, okay, I'm the dumbest person on the planet. The one thing that you can do immediately is you can say 2 + 2 = 4, but then you can say event one 3 years later, and event 4 6 years later, and you pull those in again, and it influences your decisions subconsciously.
Right.
My dad was mean, therefore, like I have a problem over here, and I don't even know why I'm doing it. But like humans, like in this emotional intelligence thing, it's just lost in AI. And it's really hard to like say that, okay, they're going to build a website until you're like, yeah, build one that's the next thing. You're like, well, what's the next thing? That's what the robot would ask. Like, I don't know. I'll tell you when I see it. It's like, imagine a robot being a consultant, and like I don't like that blue. That's what the customer says. The robot says, well, what do you want it?
Well, then what the robot would do? It would make it red.
Yeah, exactly.
It wouldn't make it a different shade of blue. It would literally make it red. It's like, well, clearly when people do this, like you would change the color, so I make it any other color.
Like blue?
The most popular color for that is red. Therefore red. No, that's exactly what it would do. Yeah, that's exactly what it would do. And actually, Ridge Raid in the chat mentioned the other story that we're going to just talk about real quick because it's the same thing. We talked about this last year. The same thing happened before with houses. So on a bigger scale than these weren't $20,000 buys that it was overbuying. These were often $1 million buys that it was buying a house way over its market value.
So I've thought about this one quite a bit. Like I've thought about this one like quite a bit. 'Cause apparently Zillow had inside baseball information. And so he went down to the programmers and says, I want you to buy every house on the market because I'm going to resell them all. I want to corner the market.
Done. We can
Done.
do that.
That's easy. I can code that. And then literally, I think what happened like 2 years later or whatever this happened, he came down and he said, I didn't mean every house at any cost. You said, well, buy every house. I bought every house. Like, well, not at any cost. I mean, like, so like, and they drove the market through the roof.
Right. It went unchecked is what happened. There was no
the
human
bottom
interaction
fell out of it.
Yep.
Yeah. And the robot doesn't really stop to say, should I pay, $600,000 for a house that was $200,000?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago. I mean, like,
it's just doing what it was told to do.
Yeah, and it did it well.
Oh, it did it really well. They bought a whole bunch of stuff, and obviously it tanked their stock because they had to sell off that business. The iBuy part of the thing, they just shut it. Well, they didn't sell it off. They just shut it down, right? They're like, we're not going to do that AI buying anymore. They just turned it off.
It was out of control.
They turned it off.
The AI got fired. Is what happened.
The AI got fired. They turned it off at a massive loss to them, and a massive inventory that they were now stuck with. That they now
they had
couldn't
to
make
sell
any
them at a
money on. They
loss.
had to sell them all off at a loss.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of funny.
It doesn't work quite right. So that question that comes up all the time, like, is the AI going to take your job? No. I don't think in our lifetimes is my guess.
I don't. Unless something like, even still though, I do think there's certain things in the human brain that we take for granted that just can't be duplicated by computers. Like, even though I'm an avid technology guy, we really underestimate the power of the human brain. It's just like, we can be extremely devious. We also can be extremely forgiving. There's a lot of things that we can do. And, and on top of that, we're keeping the heart rate running, the lungs are breathing. I'm thinking about things right now, what I'm going to talk about, like all those things that just work. And then on top of that, we can, solve problems and do things like that. So, and it's amazing too, man, when you see things that are truly creative, we have the same kind of reaction to it. Like, dang it, why didn't I think of that? That's a really good idea.
Yes.
When you see it, you're like, oh, that was so simple. Like, why didn't I think of that? And like a computer will never do it because, it's like Wordle. Like, how hard was that to make? It's like, but he went out and did it. Yeah, it's just like, wow, okay, could the AI
creative stuff that you can't program that, right? There's no, because you couldn't tell somebody how to be creative in the way that somebody can with Wordle. You can't even you can't bring that down to a series of instructions, right? It's not possible to do that. And it's the same way. So we see creative AI right now, right? We see there's a website where you can go buy AI paintings, right, based on other paintings. They're very abstract still. It's very it's like, wow, look what I kind of see what you did there, but is that I don't know, is it the same as a human artist? No, it's not. I find it fascinating. I do find it interesting. I actually thought about buying one at one time because I was like, this is kind of interesting. I like what the AI has done. I think it's fascinating. So is it art? Sure. Is it the same as human art? No. Have you replicated human art? No, you haven't. It's not the same thing yet. And I'm not sure that it ever will be. It's just
I don't think it can. And that's why I think ultimately there may be like things that make things easier to do, faster to do.
Right,
but
which is where we are now.
Where we make things faster and easier, that just allows us as programmers to make more complex things.
Right.
The harder it gets to do, the less complex the end result is. But now, because of like code assistance and like the things that are going on, like scaffolding or whatever, the things that happen that do kind of the crud stuff for me, that allows me to focus on, hey, I'm gonna make this prettier, more attractive, or now I have more time to develop the features further, and that's why it gets more complex. And the more complex it gets harder for the AI to even remotely keep up. So again, Copilot did not make Wordle. John Worrell did.
No.
So and it's the third time he's done it. A lot of people don't understand that. If you go look at his story, this is the third time he's made a viral game. It's like, and yet an AI hasn't ever invented something like this. And it's because it's like life experience plus what I can build, and just, I don't know how to explain it, but look like, oh, that'd be neat. That would be fun. I guarantee you that's John's thought process. I've never met the man, but he's like, oh, that would be fun if I did that. That's kind of cool. Like, let me make that, and he's just, it's in his wheelhouse, and he'll think of a fourth one. I promise you, he will.
Oh, that'll be something else, definitely.
Yeah, he's probably has it in his wheelhouse right now. Like, I'm just gonna, take a break with my 3 million plus I got from New York Times. Go on vacation a little bit, but
exactly. Go do something.
I mean, who thinks of the idea? What if I put a button on Reddit that if you didn't click, the game would end? And only one person can click it every minute or once a day. Like, I forget what the parameters were. And they kept that thing running for months because people were like, "Oh, I've got to click it." And I've got to tell my friend to go do it because I only can do it once. So that means I got to bring, and millions of people are just clicking this button.
It was the lost derivative of Reddit, wasn't it? That's what it was. It's like, that's where that came from.
It's crazy. You're like, what's the button do? I have no idea.
I just know I got to push it.
I just got to push it. So does it launch missiles somewhere? Maybe, but it doesn't matter. I'm pushing it.
I know. Just know I got to push it.
Anyway, so I don't think robots are taking over.
So if anybody's used GitHub Pilot, I've messed with it. I have it on VS Code. Like I play with it a little bit. Whenever I still have it turned on VS Code. So if I ever play around in VS Code at all, it does do the predictive typing, and it is very smart in that sense.
No, it's pretty cool.
But I say it's smart in terms of it only knows again what it's been told. So it's going based on, it's collecting everybody's information. It's saying, oh, when you type this in here, you're starting a variable, right? You type let, oh, I know you want a variable there. Oh, and I know in context of what you're doing there, like what you want it to kind of be. So I'm going to predict that based on, because the last 100 people that did this, 70 of them did it this way. So therefore, I'm going to predict this. And that's the way it works. It's just prediction based on what other people have done. That's pretty much what it comes down to. It's learned that behavior.
And sometimes it's wrong. And
it's wrong a lot of times.
Yeah, and then sometimes like 50-50. We're using Visual Studio 2022 in this cohort for the first time. So like, I realize it came out last year. And so when we're teaching it for the first time, even though we use it a lot, like we're running into this thing, we've come up with this term this year, like over-aggressive autocomplete, where it's like you're doing stuff and the freaking thing is like, no, quit, stop, quit typing for me, man. Slow it down, slow your roll, like that's not what I want.
It's choosing the wrong thing for you, right? It's like it's typed ahead, and you've typed in 3 letters and it thinks you want this one object, and you're like, no, I don't want that. Like that's it's easy.
It's the
to
new
get
game
stuck
code.
in that.
I can guess that line of code in 1 character.
It is. And actually, often GitHub Copilot does quite a good job of that. It'll actually guess the next line before you've even written it, right? It'll know, like, based on what other people have done. It's like, oh, I know you want an if statement right there, and I know what you want it to do based on the variable that you've given me. I know the context of what you've called your function. I know what you want it to do, and I'm just going to, here you go, here's my suggestion. And sometimes it's right. And when it's right, it's a matter of just hitting tab and it writes it for you. But would it create the whole thing? Would it create the whole thing though if you just told it to? No, it gets that very wrong. If you say, create me a website to sell widgets, it can't do that. It has no clue what to do with that.
It doesn't.
Nothing. It just can't do that. Can it create a correct function? Sometimes, sure. It can give you a base to start with too. Like that's kind of nice.
It can save you from typing if and else
exactly,
and
the brackets and exactly
all that kind of stuff, so you don't miss on the syntax things and breaks up.
Yes, it does the syntax
whereas
well, for sure.
The logic, it's just depends on what you're doing, so it's kind of cool.
Yep. Hold on, let me talk about this real quick. So Eli says, in terms of abstract art from AI, you only have second thoughts if you knew it came from AI generation. I don't think that's true. Although I did know the site was from AI, I've seen some of I looked at it and clearly there's something wrong with it, right? That you can just tell that there's something wrong with it. You can just tell. There's something inherently weird about it.
So I don't know if people remember, I'm going to date myself. There's a next generation. Okay. I think it was either next generation or whatever had the, I'll talk about that in a second, but we can look at some of these pictures. Yeah. It's kind of weird.
There's something. See what I mean? There's something inherently wrong with this. That
it doesn't look right.
It just for some reason it just doesn't look right.
Yeah.
I get it. That's an abstract piece of art, and I understand that. But there is just something about these. And when they do people, look at this. This is obviously abstract still, but it's obviously based on an individual. You can kind of tell.
But they stretch the face wrong.
But it's there's just something about it. If you ask me if a human created this, my first instinct would be no.
Right.
I would think that there wasn't. But some of this, I am fascinated by it still, though. I do like some of the ones that do have kind of people in them, if you want to call them that. Like this too, look. It's taking, it's abstracting other art into its own art. It's just something about it isn't right, but clearly it's close. This looks abstractly like a horse or something, maybe in a person. But it didn't quite get it. That's not what it did. So, but I do find these fascinating. $600 though. You want to buy it for $600?
Nah. But maybe cool. Carvana will. Carvana will ask you, hey, you know what? I see that.
I'm going to make an AI that buys up AI art. Yeah.
I'll give you $1,200 for it because I really need to get this. So, my boss said that I need all the AI art I can get.
A bot that just buys AI art. But again, not to say that I am fascinated by it though. I do find them interesting. As art, I just don't think they'll kind of replace human art. Oh, here's a good one. Look, this one's a good one. Hold on, let me show you this one. Because this kind of one fascinates me because it's so close yet so far, right?
It's not good.
There's something about it that's I do find it fascinating, but in a
and also
AI art
that one
kind of way.
In particular, I think the title is wrong. Clinginess. It's more like cringiness. That's where they really should change the name of that art. And then you're like, yeah, I see it. It's cringiness.
I don't know how they create these actually. I don't know if they give it a title or a human
AI
titles
comes up with it.
Do you think?
I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. But again, I do like this. But $600, probably not.
No.
So these are kind of like NFTs, kind of, right? It is
kind of
very realm.
I'm surprised they haven't been turned into NFTs.
And maybe they have. Maybe there are NFT like, because that's really what an NFT is on the art side of stuff, right? They have an AI created or a programmatically, I should say, generated image
gorillas
that they then sell. Exactly, like the gorillas or whatever you want to do. They just they change one aspect of it and resell it as a different NFT, and then it's unique. That's kind of how that works. But I don't know. It's fascinating, but they're not taking over anytime soon.
They're not.
Yeah. Okay. Now that we've talked about that for a few minutes, you want to do some questions?
Sure, let's do it, man. Let's do it. The robots aren't taking over.
The robots aren't taking over. That's the conclusion we've come to here. If you do have questions, throw them in chat. I will queue them up. We'll get to as many as we can. If you super chat it, I'll guarantee we answer it. Otherwise, I would just go through them in kind of the order that they come in or the order of my choosing.
And if you want to buy me tacos, hey, hit me on the taco meal plan there.
You can do that too. Again, we're here every Tuesday, Thursday. So if you don't get your question answered today, come back Tuesday. We'll be here again. So let's see. What's Walter saying? Walter says, how do I know what version of .NET I'm using? I'm using VS 2019.
So you're using .NET 5 and under. And so like you can pick which framework that your app is compiled to. So like it's a setting when you start your project, and you can also override that in the build settings. So you can like push two different frameworks. 2022 will have .NET 6 and everything under and forward too. So
yeah, you can put.
So you're using .NET 5 or under.
Can't you manually add .NET 6 to 2019?
I don't know if you can add it to 2019. I think there's some things in there. You need to use the new tooling.
I'm trying to think. I remember,
wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can't. But
I remember building the address book app, and there's a place in there somewhere where you do select which version of .NET you use. I do remember. There may have been a
preview at one time, but like I think the new one is 2022 has the .NET 6 going forward. So, buy the new tooling. And that's because of things like hot reload. There's some features that are integrated with the new frameworks too as well.
Right. Hope that helps, Walter.
Yeah, hope that helps, Walter.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Tito says, hello, Bobby and Kevin. Hey, Tito. What are the success metrics you would look for when interviewing a junior developer? I like this question.
Success metrics I would look for.
What are you looking for when you interview it?
So if I'm hiring someone, I'm interviewing someone, I'm looking at like, have you built something before? I don't care if you're junior, senior, middle. I want to look at what you've built before, and then can you talk about it? So when I'm interviewing seniors, a lot of times I'll ask them, hey, what are you working on? That's one of my standard interview questions. If you've ever interviewed with me, I'm going to let you into my thought process. Okay. So I'll say, hey, what have you worked on? And they'll tell me something about what they're doing. And then I'll ask an inquisitive question on purpose. But what I'm trying to understand is, did you build this? So I'm like, so how does that part work? Like, what does it do? Like, how did you do that? Like, how does it work? And if they can tell me, that means that they're coding on it. And if they can't, that means they're part of a team, but they didn't really work on it.
Or they just copied it from somewhere. This is why you don't copy just a project and throw it on your portfolio or not understand it.
Yeah. So in juniors, it's the same method. They show me tic-tac-toe. I might ask them about how the tic-tac-toe algorithm works. How did you solve this? How did you do that? And if you can't answer that, then you didn't build it. You copied it, but you didn't build it. So there's a big difference. So I look at things, can you talk about what you're building? I think in general, if you do that really well, either instinctively or you train yourself to talk about your code to answer questions, you're going to perform better in interviews, period. I think that is the difference between why some people get jobs and others don't, is that They answer abstract questions with concrete details.
Yeah.
They talk in examples, and they can talk about those examples really well. And some can do it, and some have to really work hard at being able to do it.
It's funny because you were telling me a story. You were telling me a story about the cohort that are in right now. I remember you were talking about there was a particular person in the class, and it was like you asked them a question. It was like he gave you the exact answer that you're talking about. It's like hold on, everybody, stop for a second. This is how you answer this question. Like, give me that again. And it's like, this is how you do it. Because he just naturally did it.
He didn't even know that he did it. He just
didn't know he did it. You didn't
Right.
prompt him to do it that way. He just did it, and it's a natural thing that happened to him, and that's how he was going to answer it anyway. And it's like everybody else who was going to answer it differently. That's how you need to answer it.
Right. With an example. So it's kind of cool. All right. So I hope that helps, Tito.
Okay. Adrian's question says, "Hi, what do you think is embedded harder than web development or software development?"
So for us in the US, we don't differentiate between, well, I guess software development could be like desktop. So so let's say you're doing embedded, you're doing web, you're doing desktop. Let's just assume that's 3. You could also throw in mobile in there. So let's really 4. So let's just talk about those 4. They're all different. They all have different things that you have to learn. So with web development, it's the most in demand, but probably it actually has more moving parts. You got CSS, HTML, JavaScript, SQL, some kind of back-end language. There's more moving parts.
Million frameworks.
With embedded, you have to solve different problems, and so you're typically running at a lower level. And some people may find those types of problems harder to understand because there's no necessarily visual aspect to it, and and so there's some more computer science things that you may need to understand more, but then when you go to mobile's a lot like web, and it just have a different UI language that you've got to understand, whether that be on Swift, Android, or whatever, or Maui. And then it's very similar to web development in that regard, but you don't use HTML, you use something else to build it. Desktop's the same way. You got different tools to figure out how to make the button on the page and that kind of stuff. A lot of times it's with WinForms, it's drag and drop, or you can have declarative like XAML where you're marking it up. So I think they're all just kind of different. I don't think anyone's really harder. Embedded may be harder because it's more foreign if you haven't done it before to a web page, and you may not understand what's intuitively walking in, how does this work? Whereas if you've looked at web pages before, you're like, okay, I need a web page. Yeah, I know what a web page is. I don't know how to build one, but I know what one is. So you have a more frame of reference walking in. But I think any of them can be done and achieved. You'll learn the patterns, and you do the same things over and over again, the same types of things to achieve and solve the same types of problems, whatever that is.
So is embedded different a lot then, depending on, I'm guessing it is, depending on what hardware you're working?
Yeah, so it's like chipsets are supported by So you got ARM, I guess, would be if you're building something for an embedded on an ARM device, or you're building something for an ARM device that's running in a car. You may not have a UI kit framework, so you may have to build all that stuff. Okay, I got to make a box, and this is how I draw the box, and and then sometimes you have UI frameworks, and you're like, okay, I can use that, but generally you have to build everything because of low memory constraints, low speed constraints, and those kind of things. So
plus, I'm guessing there's a lot less resources too, right? If you get stuck on something, it's going to be way more niche, right? If you're working on a particular piece of hardware, finding the resources, somebody's ran into your problem before, is probably going to be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, so and then you have Adreno, and you have things out there that are common across a lot of these embedded devices, the type of processor. But you don't have, you actually take a step back in technology, is what I always say. You're doing something more complex, but what you can use and the tools you have are taking a step back in time. Whereas when you go to mobile and web, you're that's where all the modern stuff, because you have access to richer processors, more memory, and those kind of things. And so you're not going to have 64 gigs of RAM on your car player device in your Ford Explorer. You need to make this work in 4 megabytes or something, and so then you have to make decisions, so there's certain things you can do and certain things you can't. So
interesting.
It's a little bit difficult in that regard.
And you've done some of this before too, right?
Yeah. So
worked
one of
on
my first jobs
right?
was the very first, probably in the early 90s, I was doing stuff on engines, but also after that, I went and worked for a company and we were building survey stuff, but they were using early, like not even a thing that you would call a tablet today. It was more like
Okay.
an embedded computer that ran VB, like embedded VB, which is more like VB3. And so this is in the mid, well, actually it's in 2000, early 2000. So
Okay.
like when we were doing that, it's like you're used to like, you know, .NET and like VB6 or whatever, VB.NET. You're like, and then you get back here and you're like, dude, I got to go back to like record sets. I mean, like, and so it was like really old, but that's because of the memory constraints, the processor constraint, and all that kind of stuff. So that you couldn't use all the newer stuff. Now, I would say today, I haven't done it in the last 5 years. So like if I looked at something today, like on a Raspberry Pi, it may even be easier now than it was back then.
But I would also say the solution to like what you were talking about right now is probably just an iPad, and it probably is a website, right? I mean,
yeah, it is now.
It's probably a web solution.
So
Like it's a web solution right now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
like that was just so much easier. You know, like I felt like I want to go in there sometimes and talk to the guys. You know, back in my day, had to walk uphill both ways in the snow. You know, like that's the way it felt.
That's funny.
Yeah,
that's funny. That's cool. Okay, let's see. Jack Bryan, welcome back, Jack. And that rhymed. Cool. Okay, so I started learning C# because my heart wants to be a C# developer, but my brain is really tempting me to jump back into this blockchain Solidity bandwagon. Who should I listen to? Listen
to the C# developer. You're gonna if I don't know if you're working right now. So if you're not working as a dev, you're learning the right thing about C#. I think blockchain Solidity is going to be a niche part of the market. Doesn't mean that you can't make money doing it. It's just going to be smaller, a lot smaller, because it does a specific thing. You know, C# is going to let you build websites and mobile sites and all those other types of things that can go to any kind of problem, just not smart contracts. So like if Solidity doesn't make it and smart contracts don't become widespread, then it always will be niche. And so I think blockchain and Solidity should be the second thing you learn. I think you need to learn web dev or desktop dev or mobile dev first, and then you can branch into like, what does Web3 mean in relation to those other things? Because if you don't have a UI on your Solidity project, it's probably not very good, which means that you've got to go back and learn the HTML and CSS stuff anyway. So I think you'll make more money being a really great C# developer than you would be I just know Solidity. Now you can put those two things together and you have a winner. So
right. But you're saying start with the C# stuff first.
Yeah, so when you go to Twitter and people saying learn Solidity now, you don't understand who's saying that to you, what the audience is. You need to ask like, well, what are the things that you know? And they're like, well, I know all of these things.
Exactly. Oh, I'm already a web dev.
Yeah, but so I'm learning this other thing I'm adding to my toolkit. You know, like whereas you're coming as a junior, like, oh, I'm going to get Solidity as my first thing in my toolkit, and you're like, man, nah, because you're going to have to compete with all these other people that know 5 or 10 things, and they're going to get picked over you because you only know the one thing. You don't know how everything else is connected together. So it's not the first thing you learn right now, for sure. C# will help you way further.
Okay, and it's Jack's first time. I thought I recognized the name before, but maybe.
Yeah, so yeah, C#. C#.
Yeah, let me see. What is this? C#, Unity, game dev, and .NET dev. There you go. Cool. Yeah, definitely achievable.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. You can't build a game in Solidity.
Let's see. Away we go, 747. Thank you for the question here. I'm not sure. I haven't read it yet. I'm in a bootcamp now, and the instructor is telling a lot of what and how, but not a lot of why. Okay, I like this. Can you tell me the best way to learn to program and not just code? Maybe how to plan better.
All right, so here's what I think you're struggling with. All right, and I think you're the type of learner that we
see
run
this
into a lot, a lot. Okay, and it doesn't mean you're wrong. All right, but knowing the mechanics of what and how is more important than a lot of the why in the beginning. because we can stay on the why part for years,
Yes.
right?
You'll always be doing the why.
And the other problem with knowing all the why up front is because I believe that you feel like you have to memorize every single thing, and you don't realize like all of these things change on a constant basis. So I need to know what I need to do and how I would do that, and then why I'm doing it. It's like, do we really need to understand as a junior dev how the ins and outs of garbage collection? And I know that people are going to go, yes, you do. You need to know everything about it. And I'm like, no, you don't. You really don't. You know, it's like, you know, when do I call the disposement and when do I don't? Does it really, really, really matter? You know, so like, do I need to understand parallel programming? Do I, you know, like task parallel library or kind of synchronous? And they're like, and there's like all these computer science. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And I'm like, not really. I just want to build a web page, man. I mean, like, you know, it's like, you know, right. So like, I think learning the what and the how to code and what to do, and learning about these patterns, and then you can learn some of the why along the way, but you're going to add to that knowledge as you go. Remember, you're not going to know everything walking out of the box out of your bootcamp. The best thing you can get out of your bootcamp is a portfolio of projects and learn how to talk about them. That should be your goal in your bootcamp. You know, and the reason is you have a very small window where they can give you enough information so that you can get a job. So like, your bootcamp's never going to tell you every single thing that you need to know. Like, you know, we get hit on that sometimes. Like, man, they didn't tell me about that, therefore Coder Foundry sucks. I'm like, well, no, you learned that obviously. So like,
right.
we wanted you to get enough to where someone can hand you a paycheck of money, and then you keep adding to your skill set. That's why we always say remain committed to your craft, and you'll learn stuff. There's stuff that I learn all the time, you know, CSS and all that kind of stuff that I'm still learning, you know, like, and I've been doing this for a long time. You know, I know more than most. I mean, but like, I still learn things, you know, and I still Google stuff, you know, I mean, so I don't have it all memorized. I mean, so just, you know,
I think it's very easy to get stuck in the why, isn't it? It's very easy to get stuck in the why. You jump in
that rabbit hole, man, and like, why? And you're like, and it just how far do you go down that rabbit hole? Like, I think you need to know enough to build a website. I'm sure you're on Bootcamp, that's what you're doing more than likely. You could be data science, you could be desktop, but like more than likely, you need to know enough. Can I build a website? And if someone gave me some things to do, could I do them? And if you can, you'll get a job doing this, and then you can learn about the difference between HTTP 1, HTTP 2, and HTTP 3. You know, I saw that, I was looking at a front-end dev thing, and that was their number one question. You need to understand the difference between these three. And I'm like, really? Really? I mean, typically you just post the thing to the web server and that underlying transport is just taken over for you.
Right.
And you don't have to figure that out. And especially if this is your first job out, the underpinnings of it's kind of crazy.
I think there's some things that for me fit in a bucket of nice to know.
Yeah, it's nice to know.
That's a nice to know thing. It's not an essential thing. You can just rely on the technology to work for you. Like you can look that up at a later date. We have to preface like the first day of bootcamp with like, we have this thing that's called trust the process. Trust the process. Because you're going to think that the process is broken because you're not learning all the whys. It's not. It's designed, like you said, in a way to teach you how to code. Teaching you how to be a programmer takes a lot longer. Like you're going to develop into being a programmer over time.
And how to plan and how to like build something from scratch, all the way from scratch where people rely on you. And think about, like, I always go back to this. We use this analogy all the time in the cohort, which is Karate Kid. And so Mr. Miyagi in the very first Karate Kid movie, he told him to, you know, go sand the fence or whatever he's doing. And it was wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. And then David comes up, you know, whatever his name was, Daniel Caruso comes up, when are you going to teach me karate? And he punches him, wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. And he's like, oh, now I understand the why I did it. But if I told you why you do all these things, but you didn't have a frame of reference to know how to do it, that's why I think the what and the how has to come first. Because if I tell you all of the computer science details, you're like, yeah, I don't understand. It doesn't make there's no frame of reference. And it's like, you don't, you know, why do I do that? I don't know, really, because I don't know how to do it. So I think the how comes first, and then you can learn the why as you know, as you move along in your career. Hope that helps, man. Don't give up on your boot camp. So
and he says,
yeah, just keep coding.
So yeah, keep at it. Yeah. Keep at it, definitely.
And he could be in Coder Foundry. I don't know. So, like,
Maybe.
I don't think he is. But
I'll assume it's another bootcamp. But same things apply. Same things apply.
Same things apply, man. I would tell the same group to the group in there right now.
Here's a question for you: which programming language is perfect, if not best, for building APIs?
So you can build APIs with multiple things. I think C# is not, and there's nothing that's perfect. I mean, there's always can be room for improvement. C# allows you to build web APIs, RESTful services. They have multiple templates. You know, they got a minimal template. They've got like the really robust template. They've got built-in security, all these kind of things. The .NET framework that surrounds all this, I think it's the best one. But you can do it with JavaScript and Node. You can do it with Go. You can do it with lots of things. So I don't think there is a best one out there necessarily.
It's just lots of options, right? That's like asking like, what's the best car? And it depends on like your circumstance and what your scenario is. If you're driving in the snow, your Lamborghini ain't going to be very good, is it?
No,
you know, so
we've seen that in Fast and Furious.
There you go. So it's that's the same kind of thing. It just depends.
Yeah. So like, and it also too, like you picking on programming language, and so like a lot of times that's where the dividing thing is between us and everyone else. So it's like C# or Go or JavaScript. What do I do? Which one's the best language? But what I look at is like, what's the best environment? So there's this language plus the tooling, plus the templates that are built into the tooling, and like the ecosystem that surrounds the language, which is the frameworks that I can pull in security, I can pull on these other things. How easy is it for me to be productive? That's to me what goes into what is better. And when you put all of that together, that's why we pick .NET. It doesn't mean the other ones aren't valid, because obviously people are doing that every single day and making money doing it, and that's fine. But you have to pick one way to do it. So like that's building APIs is common to most of these kind of platforms. So you can build them with all of them.
There you go. Adrian wants to know, is Spring Framework easier than Django?
I don't know. I don't think they're any harder than the other. You just gotta learn how they both work and just go for it.
Yeah, I think that's the same with any of these things, isn't it? When it's like, if somebody's is this thing harder than this thing, it's like,
nah.
No, it's a learning curve on all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I would pick the one that gets me the job. So here's let me preface this with like at Coder Foundry. At Coder Foundry use them. It's not what's easy; it's what's necessary. And so we say this all the time. It's like, don't do the easy thing; do the necessary thing for you to get employment. And that relates to like job environments, how many opening positions there are, and what stacks are they using to do those things. That's what you need to learn. And typically that's not the easy thing. That's usually, it's a little bit more complex than just, hey, I learned the easiest thing to do. Well, that's great. If no one's using the easy thing in the job market, well, what's the point of learning the easy thing? And the amount of effort required to learn Spring MVC or Django or ASP.NET, I would say they're kind of equal in terms of effort. So pick the one that gives you the most opportunity. Do what's necessary, not what's easy.
There you go. Write that down. Do what's necessary, not what's easy. That's
yeah.
Stick that on a sticky note. Stick that on your monitor.
Yeah, man. Tattoo it. Just give me credit for it. Just put BD on the bottom of it.
That's it. Have it tattooed on your forehead and then a little Bobby Davis.
Yeah, I would like to have one of those, like, you know, it's like one of those stickers that you put on your wall, you know, like I go in like Wayfair and it's like got my ism in there. That'd be awesome.
You know, now that I think about that, that's not in the book, is it?
No, it's not.
We didn't have a chapter on that. Maybe that's version 2 of the book. Maybe we do we do an updated version at some point. That's gonna be the update in the book. Okay, let's see. Eli says, does Blazor WebAssembly, or I guess is Blazor WebAssembly a good stack to create a PWA?
Yeah, it's built in. Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool. You just pick a compile option that pushes it, and you can sideload it right into your browser, or on your mobile phone. It's completely thought out and built out.
So is that one of its is that literally one of its goals then? Is that one of its?
It's one of them. Yeah, because like at the time, the reason Microsoft's pushing PWAs is because you don't have to put it in the store. Right. And so when you don't have
everybody's trying to get
store,
around. Right?
Yeah, you want to build the technology that's the best way not to be in the Apple Store and not to be in the Android Store. So PWAs is a great way to do that. Sometimes you don't need a full-fledged thing. You just need like a news site. Doesn't need to be a mobile native app. There's typically nothing in there that you can't do with a PWA. And so and then you can get it to the browser or the mobile home screen by using the PDA by loading it right there on your screen. So
okay, so Wordle is considered a PWA?
That's just a website, just a mobile website.
Yeah, but on my phone, I can add it as an actual. Then
it's a PWA then.
Yeah, I can add it as an actual app. And by the way, I haven't done today, so please don't spoil anybody. But you can add it as an app, and it creates just an icon on the desktop, and then I can just click it. And it doesn't open
up. That's what it is.
It doesn't open up a traditional browser window.
Right.
It's obviously there's
no. It's in a Chrome. It's in a Chrome on the web. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay,
so WebAssembly, yes, 100%, Eli.
There you go. Cool. Let's see. Mock says just started the book tracker from the self-paced course. So much content. Wish me luck. Yeah, it's funny.
It is a big thing.
Somebody actually asked us the other day how much content was in there, and like video, like lengthwise. Somebody had emailed in and be like, "Hey, how much video is in the course?" I was like, "Well, I know somebody counted it before we put the movie app and the book tracker in. There was like 52 hours or something worth of video." I was like, "It must be double that." And I'm like, "It's an easy way to figure this out from the app." And unfortunately, there isn't. Like our platform doesn't give us an easy way to give the video count. But it's probably like another 50 hours, I'm guessing. It has to be.
Easy.
It has to be.
Yeah.
So there's probably about 100 hours worth in there. There's probably 30 or 40 hours worth of the bug tracker stuff. There's a lot in there. It is a lot of work. Antonio put a massive amount of work into it.
Yep.
Why it took a while. So yeah, good luck. Yeah, I'll share with us your bug tracker when you're done.
You don't need luck. You just need hard work, baby. That's all you need. Make your luck.
There you go. Okay, what's up next? Now plus forever. Twice. Now plus forever, now plus forever. I don't know if that's a bug or that's the name by design. Can you break into this field if you're not the strongest / okay communicator? Or do you really need to work on it in order to get promoted one day?
So here's what I think, and I actually in the book I do have how to be a rockstar developer. Like
there is a chapter at the end.
There's a chapter on that, and so like, unfortunately, yes, doesn't mean you won't get promoted if you're not a good communicator. But the people that reach most of the time the very pinnacle of wherever they're going to be are fantastic communicators. The one I would say that's really not that is Jack Dorsey. Like when you, at least later, I haven't seen him early, but the current version of Jack Dorsey, when you hear him talk, it's like, wow, how'd you get this far? Like, cause he's like really kind of like standoffish, not a whole lot of information. But then you look at someone like Barack Obama and you're like, okay, the first time you heard him speak, okay, he's gonna be president, you know? And love him, like him or hate him, Donald Trump's the same way. Like these guys really,
there's a reason they
like,
get to the top.
Their point across, you know, like they get their point across. Now, you can make fun of him all day long, or you may hate either one, but like, I'm just saying that both of those guys kind of communicate really well. Different styles, obviously, but like, you know, so I think that the person that can communicate complex projects like coding to business leaders and their customers in a non-threatening way that's also not condescending gets paid as much as you can pay them in this industry. You know, that's why there is a DevRel job, because the coder behind that can't explain it worth a snot. He can like fix it and make it work and make it amazing. But if you ask him like, well, how does this work? He goes, I don't care, man. I just do it. You know, like, it's like, you know,
it's like I lock myself away for hours at a time and it just works. Just leave me alone.
Or you meet these programmers too. Sometimes they're like, well, it's complicated. I don't think
that's always the answer. You're not going to understand it. You're not going to get it.
You're too stupid to understand this, you know? And so like, it puts people off. This is why they don't get promoted, because they seem grumpy coder guy, which we talk about this in the book, grumpy code guy. So to be a 10x developer is to move the needle on the business side, and which means that you're empathetic toward the plight of the business. You also understand the technical part of it, and you bring those worlds together in a non-threatening way. That's the match made in heaven. So work on your communication skills, to be short. Yes, it's a good thing to work on. How do you do it?
There is another thing too, though. But if this is never going to be for you and it's something you never ever want to work on, can you also have a successful career?
Yeah, be highly
depends
technical.
on what depends on what your definition of success is. Can you make 6-figure salaries and be a non-communicator? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
But if you can look at and go look him up, he's on Microsoft, Scott Hanselman, who's running like education, Visual Studio, all those kind of stuff. And you just watch one of his YouTube videos. He's fantastic at it. He's really good at it. He's got this kind of Bob Ross thing going on. But he's really, really, really good. He's funny. He's engaging. He can tell you that. He's not threatening. He doesn't talk down to you. And so he's at the top end of Microsoft. Why? Because he's a really good communicator. Is he strong technically? Yeah, he's smart. Those kind of people do move forward. So let's say that you're now plus forever, now plus whatever that means. But let's say that you're not a communicator right now. You're not that guy right now because maybe get in front of a crowd gives you anxiety, or maybe you don't do well when you're speaking in front of crowds. What I would say is start prepping what you want to say. Maybe start with notes and those kind of things, and you bring your 3x5 cards in until you can pull it off like a presidential candidate who can just walk out and tell you what you want to hear, and then you're like, wow, I would vote for that guy anywhere I want, and so that's what,
Yeah, you can overcome that by, you're right.
That's what Steve Jobs did, man. Steve Jobs is the example of a very highly technical guy, kind of grumpy guy, but man, when you put him on stage, he's like, everyone is going to get one of these.
Yeah. His delivery is
just, really? It wasn't really. You're like, you're right, Steve.
Yeah, you're
I'm
like,
just stand in line right now.
Take my money. Where's the line? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then Tim Cook does it and tries to do it, and you're just like, I don't know, Tim.
It's not the same. It's not as compelling. It's not as compelling, is it? There's something about the guy. He just has a skill set that is just very, very good at that.
So anyway, but communication is a great skill if you can develop it. But if you don't have it, doesn't mean all is lost. There's highly technical people can definitely win. Grumpy coder guy actually has a job. He limits.
Grumpy coder guy wins. Exactly. He does win.
He just limits his ceiling.
Yeah.
So I think
we don't encourage you to be grumpy coder guy because we think
it's not where you want to be.
It does limit your ceiling. And it kind of alienates you. Grumpy coder guy moves around a lot. A lot of times too, because people don't get along with grumpy coder guy. Exactly. He gets asked to leave. It's just a polite way of saying grumpy coder guy gets fired a lot.
Yeah, you're really smart. You know what you're doing. But we're making changes.
Exactly. You're also kind of toxic. So
we're going in another direction. So
so don't be that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Heel says, for starting with web dev, Python versus Mirn, which to choose for full stack? What about?
How about .NET? I mean, that's what we're gonna pick. But if I had to pick between those two, I'm probably leaning Mirn. But then again, I'm throwing out the database out of Mirn anyway and using SQL. So I'm not even a big fan.
You're not the Mongo fan. You're not the Mongo bandwagon.
Well, no, I just don't think many people use it like what they think it does. So I would be a Perm, like a Postgres, Express React node, something like that would be better for me. Python, if you're not doing data science, I just don't know if you could really look at it and say there's more jobs out here, and so you're saying for starting, and that's the thing that Sahil, that I want you to think about. Like, what are the jobs in my areas? What are the stacks they're using? So I would be on the Perm stack if I had to pick between those two. But if you said I could pick anything I want, I'm picking the one we based the bootcamp on, which is .NET. So, which is, ASP.NET, SQL. That's what we're going to do. C#.
Yeah. Just jump back to your previous thing. It's got the 10,000 songs in your pocket. Yes, genius.
Is that what he said?
Hey, when the iPod first came out, when he pulled out the iPod out of his pocket, when he explained this device, and then pulled it out of his pocket and be like, and it's right here. And it's like, oh God, that's so good. I remember when he did the first iPhone, remember he described it as being, he says like, so we're releasing products today. We have an internet communicator. We have a telephone. We have a thing. We have an internet communicator, telephone. And he's like, and it's right here. And he's like, it's one device. He pitched it as genius, absolute genius. Just so good. Whereas on the other end of this, yes, we've seen this. Back in 95 when Bill Gates predicted the internet, he had the foresight, but he wasn't the same communicator. Bill Gates was never the same communicator that Steve Jobs was, and I think you're probably right about Zuckerberg being the same way too. He's in that same same realm for me. Not a great communicator, but a really but has the right idea at the right time.
Yeah, I know this sounds crazy, and I'll never be as successful as Zuckerberg. So like, I have to preface this: props to the man for rolling Facebook out. But when you look at FANG companies and you say, if I had to pick one of these going under, which one would I pick? And I'm picking Facebook because of what I saw with MySpace. So like, he replaced another thing that was a thing. And then when you look at AOL and you look at Yahoo, I put Facebook in that realm. Google and Microsoft have evolved from what they normally did from the beginning to where they've reinvented themselves. So like, you know, for as much as you guys hate on Microsoft for building Windows and thinking, oh, they're just Windows centric, they're not. Like, you gotta like give Nadella credit for rolling out Azure. Like, they have like went after that hook, line, and sinker. And just really been dominant in that area where they're the one of the two. It's either the AWS or them, and they're nipping at those heels every single day. And they still have Windows, and they still have Office, and they still have, you know, all these other things. And so like, whereas Zuckerberg is going through the transition. He's like trying to figure out what's next. Like,
they're pivoting right now as we watch.
They hope it's Meta, you know, but then you're like, I don't know if it's going to be, but like, I do think this is coming. I just don't know if they're going to win. I mean, like, you know, we'll see if he does it, if he pulls it off and they're doing it, then you can put Zuck in a new class. You know, it's always the second thing that you do after you become famous is like, you know, everyone can make, you know, it's like one hit wonders the songs, you know, like, you know, you know, the Rickroll, you know, I'm never going to give you up. You're like, well, what's that follow-up song? I don't really have one.
He had other songs too. He was massive. You know, it's funny because I have this just total tangent, but I have this debate with my wife all the time. She's always like, she'll say there's a band and it's a one-hit wonder, and I'll always be like, yeah, but they had this other song too. Like, that came, and I'll always be like, it's not a real one-hit wonder. Like, they had an album. Like, but only one's a hit. Like, they had other songs, but one's a hit.
Yeah. So I have to give Bill Gates credit for what he did that's different than Apple. You got to understand that they had two different visions and they both won. Steve Jobs went out there and says, I want to sell every human being this device. Bill Gates said, I want to sell every company this device. And I want to go after corporate America. He went after the guy walking down the street. They both won. And we bought both of the things.
They both crossed over as well.
Yeah. And so like, it was kind of crazy that they were both right. And we try to say, you know, Steve was more successful than Bill or for whatever. And I'm like, no, I don't think so, man. Like, they both won like hard. I mean, like, they both won, you know, overachieved what they did. So
they both ripped off each other and other companies too. So.
Oh yeah, that's okay. Yeah, stole SQL Server. I get it. You know, you're upset that Sybase didn't make it.
Apple did the same thing. They did their mouse wasn't original. Like, they saw it at IBM first. Let's see. Is Ionic React together with .NET backend the easiest way to create mobile apps?
I'm going to say a hard no on that one, but like, I haven't used Ionic React really. So like, you know, and that's why I'm saying a no, because I haven't used it. I may get in there tomorrow and try it out and say, it's pretty easy. A .NET backend is what you need. I think you're on the right track there. You need to build services on the back end that your mobile app talks to. And I think that is the architecture that you need to pursue. How do I do authentication? How do I make that back end talk to it? And I'm doing that with web APIs. All right. Then the front end technology is a choice. I think it's Flutter. I think .NET MAUI is, once it comes out, is going to be a big player in this space. That's previously called Xamarin. And then there are React natives and those kind of things. And so I haven't used Ionic React. The question is anyone else using Ionic React? I don't know the answer to that. So like, if that's really big, then that's great. The other thing is Ionic React, I'm assuming, is it cross-platform? Can it build mobile to Apple? I think it can, but I'm not an expert in every single framework that comes out. I just look at the dominant ones. That's why I'd probably, if I had to pick right now, I'm going to pick MAUI because I'm a C# fan. But if I couldn't pick that, I'm picking Flutter because they make Android, and that's where I want to be with one of the tooling manufacturers. I wouldn't pick React because it's Facebook, and are they invested in React? You know, like, is that their thing? And it looks like they're pivoting, and you could see that going away because we're over here on the metaverse thing, and we're really not.
Maybe we don't need that anymore.
Yeah. That. Yeah. It's like, how many people are working on React? Is it 100? Is it 10,000? How many people are working on C# and .NET and Maui? Is it 100? No, it's more like 10,000. So like, it's a lot of people. The same thing in Google. How many people are working on Flutter? A bunch. I'm sure of it. You know, like that is what they want to do. So it's just, that's the way I look at these things. And I think ultimately 5 to 10 years from now, when you say who won, it's going to be the company that put the most resources in the platforms, the tooling, and the languages. And that's where I think Microsoft's going to win. Google's obviously going to win to some degree. You know, Apple's can continue to win because they own the device and the platform. So it could be easy to do it, though. I don't know.
Okay.
Again,
so the question
it's not what's easy, it's what's necessary. What
do
I have to do to win in mobile?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
like what I got to do. Tell me what I need to do, not what it's easy.
Yep. So Jack has another question.
Okay, Jack.
Says, after learning mastering C#, can I use that knowledge to learn Solidity? But do I need to learn a
100%.
completely different language like Python, C++?
Nah. There's .NET frameworks in and around Solidity. There's also just Solidity as a language in of itself. So it's really about Ethereum. And so there's these things that are built in and around that. So, but yeah, you're going to have to probably learn Solidity in general. So you kind of know what's going on. And then they're going to build, there can be .NET frameworks in and around that C#. So I think you'll find wrappers and those kind of things, but you don't need to learn C++ or Python necessarily for this. I think learning C# is all you need to know. And then you can learn Solidity and then you're good to go. You know, well, when you build your front end, you're going to have to build some kind of HTML page or something like that. So that may involve JavaScript and HTML and CSS.
Okay.
All right,
what do you think about Vue?
It's cool.
It's one of
here to stay. I mean,
you can
it's
pick.
the
right?
three that are here to stay.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, it's Vue, Angular, React. I mean, those are the three dominant front end frameworks. Vue seemingly is like, you can like
it's third. I think it feels like it's the third behind Angular and React, definitely.
Yeah, it's open source, so like there's not a whole, you know, so like, but with Vue you can pick and choose. I just want the front end piece. I don't need the back end parts of it. So that's kind of cool. You can use it just as a binding framework. React and Angular, you buy into the whole kind of ecosystem of what it's doing. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's just that some people like Vue in that regard, that you can really do just what you want. But they're both really good. They're here to stay.
But again, if you learn Vue and then you look at job postings and they're all for React, but also if all the jobs are all for React and you've learned Vue, somebody may be able to extrapolate, well, okay, this person can learn React because it is like a similar kind of thing or whatever. Or they may say, well, this guy over here that actually does know React, I'm just going to hire him instead.
Yeah, you'll get the nod for sure over that.
So there is that thing to look at. Okay, let's do one more. Should apply for a .NET job with 0 experience, even though the job listing needs 1+ years experience?
Yes, and make sure you have a portfolio with a .NET project on it so you can have proof of work. So you shouldn't have, I don't know anything and apply. You should say,
right.
I haven't worked yet, but I've built these 3 things. I can show you what I can do and apply. So that's the difference. That's what Coder Foundry students
What's the worst thing that's going to happen? What's the worst thing that's going to happen? They just say no, or you get ghosted or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So
doesn't matter.
Yes, apply more than don't. Don't be the one that we see a lot of people, don't we? That like you kind of you assess yourself. Like you're like, oh, that's not for me. You self-assessing. It's just like, yeah, that's not for me. When if you'd applied, they might have just exactly. They might have just been like, you know what? We kind of had these hopes and dreams that it would be somebody who had these skill sets right here, but we'll take this guy anyway, or this girl anyway, whatever it is. You know, it's just like that could be you. So don't let it hold you back. What does it take you? 5 minutes to apply? Like apply.
Exactly.
Go for it.
I think so.
Go for it.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for all the questions, and we'll be back on Tuesday.
Yeah, we're back on Tuesday. If we didn't get to your question, we'll do this again. We do this every Tuesday and Thursday, so come hang out.
All right, sounds good. Good luck. Keep coding, guys. We'll see you.